Yeah. Oh, actually.
I'd like to call the informal meeting of the City Commission to order. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Brown? Here. Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mrs. Houston? Here. Mrs. Tackett? Here. Mr. Rue?
Mayor Rue will be joining us later in this meeting. City Manager, would you please introduce our work session topic?
Yes, Commissioners, we have two work sessions tonight. The first one is a presentation on the Gun Violence Reduction Program, and it will be presented by Caleb Perkins, who is the Violence Intervention Coordinator at OIC. Caleb?
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Commissioners. As you know, my name's Caleb Perkins. I am the Gun Violence Prevention Coordinator for the Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative. I had come to the Commission previously regarding some of the data we had collected as part of this initiative to assess the current levels of gun violence in the community. Before I get to our recent activities, though, I would like to just kind of take a step back and kind of explain how we got to this point. So the initiative grew from a group of community stakeholders and leaders who were concerned about the increasing number of gun-related offenses in the community, particularly those offenses involving youth and juveniles who were becoming involved in the juvenile justice system. These stakeholders and leaders voluntarily started meeting to discuss how they could collectively address this issue. These group of leaders included Clark County Juvenile Court, the OIC of Clark County, the City of Springfield, Springfield Police Division, the Springfield Foundation, Springfield City Schools, the Mental Health and Recovery Board, and the Springfield chapter of the NAACP. After a few of these meetings, one of the leaders actually had brought it to the attention of the group that a grant was available. This grant was a solicitation from the Department of Justice, specifically from the Bureau of Justice Assistance's Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, also known as CVI-PI. The grant was open to applications from specific organizations, including not-for-profit community-based organizations. At the time it was presented, there was a short deadline between when an application could be put in and when those applications would be accepted. During that time, the group then discussed which agencies would be eligible to apply from that group, and who also had the capacity to collect that data, to then compile it together, and then provide the submission to the DOJ as a part of that grant application process. It was also determined at that time that if the grant were awarded to this group, who would act as the fiscal agent for those funds. At the time, the OIC of Clark County was selected as the agency to submit on behalf of the group, and then to be the fiscal agent, again, on behalf of the group. As a result of those efforts, the group was able to secure $1.6 million in federal funds for community research, planning, and initiation of activities to help the community in establishing a coordinated, cohesive, effective, and sustainable approach to preventing and reducing gun violence. I was hired to coordinate those efforts, and to date, I am currently the only employee as part of the initiative. Before I go any further, though, I would like to share a quick video from the Department of Justice that kind of explains the core concepts of the CVI-PI initiative.
So community violence intervention is more of an approach, right? And it's an approach that was designed basically to give communities a structure on how to reduce community violence, right? It's more of an approach. How do you do this work and how do you do the work well?
Community violence intervention, to me, is about empowering community to solve its problems. We believe that the individuals who are most impacted by cyclical and retaliatory gun violence, in our case, actually reside in the community. And they know most about the underlying causes of that gun violence and are best situated to develop strategies to prevent and intervene with that gun violence.
To us, it's basically a gun violence prevention intervention program. It is an ecosystem. It's not just public safety, and the city of Richmond realized that because it is obvious that it's more than police. It involves multiple disciplines and it involves the community. So that's what it means to the city of Richmond, is addressing those issues neighborhood by neighborhood to address violence.
Community violence intervention is opportunities for people who have lived experiences in our community to step up and intervene in acts of violence, people who may be thinking about violence, and honestly offering opportunities to people who think that choosing violence may be their only way of life.
The way we understand community violence intervention is where community owns the solutions to the problem that is directly affecting them. Therefore, community has a role in eradicating violence.
I would say that community violence intervention is a hodgepodge of different tools and resources that we use to make our community better based off violence that's happening in them. And so then we talk about kids getting arrested, police have to arrest them. In my city, for example, we have youth council officers, community officers, and so those youth, they funnel those children that they arrest to my organization, for example. And so what we do is we mentor before violent acts continue or before they perpetuate to a bigger scale.
In all societies, it's always been the people who are closest to the problem who are also closest to the solution. A lot of time in traditional urban communities where problems are in terms of violence, miseducation, poverty, the individuals who are directly affected by it don't have an opportunity to play a role in correcting or transforming it. And in a nutshell, community-based violence intervention is those folk who've been through it also becoming the ones who are the practitioners in solving our community-based problems in terms of violence.
Okay, so one of the objectives by the Department of Justice for this grant and implementing, these initiatives is to use evidence-informed strategies in doing so. Evidence-informed strategies are those that are defined as any practice which is backed by evidence from research and evaluation through case studies and expert opinions or documented lessons learned while in the field. To help meet this objective, our group and initiative has collaborated with Case Western Reserve University. Throughout the past year, us along with Case Western have collected and analyzed data, as part of a community assessment, which is another fundamental part of the grant's requirements. This assessment process included collecting and compiling data from agencies such as the Springfield Police Division, Clark County Dispatch Center, the Clark County Combined Health District, and by conducting community surveys and interviews to better understand the prevalence and impact of gun violence in the community. The last time I presented here, I shared a preliminary analysis of the data that was collected, and I would like to just briefly touch base on those again. And okay. As you can see from this slide, between 2021 and 2023, firearm offenders aged 14 to 24 made up more than 2 times the number of offenders arrested comparatively to the next highest offender group. And we see a steady decline thereafter. In this slide, what you see here is a heat map of the firearm related shots fired calls between 2021 and 2023. 2023 to 2024, my apologies. As you can see, a majority of those occurrences occurred in Census Tract 3, and then subsequently spread down through Census Tracts 12 and 13. In the following slide, there we go. In the following slide, you will see the occurrence of firearm-related arrests. Those are between December of 2020 and January of 2024. Again, the highest concentrations occurring in Census Tracts 3, 12, and 13. What these maps and these data tells us is that these are the areas where we need to focus our efforts. Upon completion of the community assessment, along with the research on other efforts that we have seen across similar cities that have implemented similar programs, we were able to identify protective factor programs that we can utilize that are already in place here in the community. And we are working and that we are hoping to work with or through to help reduce and prevent gun violence. The group has also been able to identify gaps where there is a need to improve and implement those practices which are evidence-based that have been shown to reduce gun violence. For the past several months, this is where the group has focused its efforts, and in going forward, we will be working on implementing the elements of our gun violence reduction plan. The development of this plan was also a requirement or a required objective as part of the grant. In addition to our plans to expand the strengths of the existing community programs and to assist them in building their capacity to more effectively impact the community through efforts such as trauma-informed practices, over the next year and a half, we will be implementing these strategies identified in our gun violence reduction plan. It is apparent that Clark County youth who are at highest risk of using guns need better access to positive role models, safe spaces to gather and connect, and more opportunities to engage in positive social activities. Gun violence impacts everyone in the community. Not only is it traumatizing for those directly and indirectly connected to the gun violence, but it is also negatively impacting our community's economy and health, both mentally and physically. All of the leaders and stakeholders who began this initiative have put forth a lot of effort to bring in these $1.6 million federal funds into the community. So, as we begin our implementation of the strategies mentioned here, we're asking for the community's support because we need a truly collective and collaborative effort to be able to make a significant and sustainable impact on reducing the gun violence in the area and to ultimately make our community safer. Thank you so much for your time and for your support. And thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you today.
Thank you. Members of the commission, are there any comments or questions?
I definitely want to say thank you for everything that you do in regards to this work.
I would echo that. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you to OIC for heading this up. Just a couple questions. Is there opportunity for citizens to get involved, and who would they reach out to? We've had a lot of citizens come and show interest in getting a youth center together. So I was really excited to see that as a possible solution going forward. So I just want to kind of put that information out there in case someone is interested in getting involved with you.
Absolutely. Anyone who wants to be a part of this initiative can reach out directly to me. My email is my first initial last name at oicofclarkco.org. Anyone is more than welcome to email or contact me. And if you do not have my information, please come and find me, and I will be happy to see how we may be able to work together.
Sorry, can you spell it out?
Sure. CPERKINS at oicofclarkco.org.
And one more question. You're working with established groups, other community, maybe nonprofits that work with our youth. Are you collaborating amongst them for additional resources and connection?
So we have identified other potential organizations to be a part of this initiative. And that's something that we're still currently assessing as we go into implementation.
Thank you. I just think, collaborating together, not reinventing the wheel. They've already started working with youth. How can we just all work together? We're definitely stronger together. So thanks, Caleb.
Thank you.
Caleb, thank you very much on behalf of the commission. This is very important work for our community, and it is many facets to it. So we wish you well. Our thanks to OIC for joining with us and the other organizations. It's going to take more than just city government to make an impact, a positive impact on this issue. So thank you for helping us determine how best to do that. Mr. Manager?
Yes, Commission, we have a second work session presentation. That is going to be presented by our Community Development Director, Logan Cobbs, and it's an update on the city's vacant property registry. So I'll let Logan get set up, and then we will begin.
Are we ready? Mayor Rue, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Logan Cobbs, Director of Community Development, and we're here to talk about the vacant property registry, some proposed ordinance updates, and then some additional legislation that will be before all of you this evening. So, a brief overview. The Vacant Property Registry was established in January of 2020. What is the Vacant Property Registry? What is its purpose? So the purpose is to reduce and prevent neighborhood blight, to avoid the creation and maintenance of public nuisances, to ameliorate conditions that threaten the public health, safety, and welfare, to promote neighborhood stability and occupancy by preserving the condition and appearance of residential properties and the worth and activity of commercial and industrial properties, and to maintain a property values and assessments. I took that directly from Chapter 1380 of the proposed ordinance updates. But what does that mean? So it essentially means that this program aims to identify and register vacant properties, both residential, commercial, and industrial, within our community. The VPR is important because it really aids us in documenting ownership of properties, has the potential to prevent crime, and really helps us as a city identify problematic properties in our community. So it just gives us a better understanding of the extent of issues in our community. A little bit of data here. We transition to the next slide. So it really puts things in perspective where we were in December of 2020. And I do want to state that of those 722 unregistered vacant properties, 171 of those had deceased owners. So that really adds another layer of complexity to it, to some of these cases as we work with the treasurer's office through those. Fast forward to December of 2022, you can see that the team really made great progress in addressing our vacant residential structures. Most notably, we saw a 15% decrease in the total number of vacants and saw a considerable increase in registrations as well. As we transition to what we're here to talk about today, here's the high-level overview of our current ordinance. So this states that, and this is specifically talking to residential properties, this states that properties are vacant after 90 days. There is an annual registration fee of $100. There's a Class A fine for non-registration. And the owner or registered agent must maintain an office here in Ohio. That's what the ordinance says today. And keep in mind that a Class A fine is $50. What will be before you this evening as a first reading is to add both commercial and industrial properties to our existing ordinance. We're seeking to increase the residential registration fee to $125 annually. That's a $25 increase. To add construction registration fee to the ordinance, and that would be $300 semi-annually. That's $600 annually specifically for commercial structures. To increase the civil fine from a Class A to a Class B for non-registration, that would be $100. And then we also added in the 250 miles from City Hall. So ultimately, that would provide some additional flexibility and latitude, and really makes it more expansive. So property owners could be in Kentucky, they could be in Indy, Pennsylvania, Illinois, within that 250 mile radius. They don't necessarily have to be in the state of Ohio. So I'm sure you're thinking that it's quite a difference between residential and commercial property registration rates. So Commission and the community, I really want to stress that commercial vacant properties really are, can be much more detrimental to our community for a variety of reasons. They often sit empty for longer periods of time, leading to economic decline. They can reduce property values and decrease tax revenue as well. They also create dead zones in business districts, as we've seen in our downtown here. And that really discourages foot traffic and investment while increasing both crime and blight. So unlike residential properties, a lot of commercial, unlike residential properties, which may be kind of sporadically occupied, vacant commercial structures often deteriorate more rapidly, and that really makes revitalization efforts really challenging and costly. I do want to speak specifically to what's considered a vacant property. In our proposed ordinance, there's kind of a 30, 60, 90-day rule that applies here that I think will make it easy for the community to remember. So after 30 days, a commercial structure is considered vacant. After 60 days, a multifamily residential structure is considered vacant. And after 90 days, a residential structure is considered vacant. I see Tom Franzen over there, our Assistant City Manager, Director of Economic Development. He had a great question when we discussed this as a team. And he said, so Logan, after 30 days, a residential property owner has to register their property. And that is not the case. But it was a really good question. And the owner of commercial structures have 60 days to register their property from the time that it becomes vacant. And residential property owners have 30 days from the time that it becomes vacant. So we understand that this is very, very much a cyclical process. So we built in time for properties to transfer, for owners to make upgrades, for selling or renting. So moving on to Hera Property Registry. So in 2022 ProChamps, which was our former registration software, they did file for bankruptcy. So that left us That left us without a reliable tracking system and really limited our access to our existing data. And as a result of that, our vacant property registry program has largely stalled. So reliable software really is essential for our program as it ensures accurate tracking, seamless data management, and easy registration for our end users, for the community. So that will also allow us to identify and address vacant properties a little bit more efficiently than what we're currently utilizing in spreadsheets. So our preferred vendor is Hera Property Registry. They're based out of Melbourne, Florida, and they'll essentially run the database for us. So they'll send out the notice of obligation to register. They'll maintain the portal. They'll work through billing, really the admin side of the work, whereas our team will still maintain inspecting of properties, issuing of any orders, and issuing of fines for non-registration. They will also be available to answer any questions that the community has. So both of these items, both the proposed updates to our ordinance and the agreement entering into a contract with Hera Property Registry, will be before you all today as a first reading. So as I wrap up, I do want to assure the community that as we make Thank you, Regina. As we make transitions, the Community Development Department will be available for any and all questions and to really walk our community through the updates here. The team has some very ambitious goals for 2025 when it comes to inspections and registrations for this registry, so we're excited to get started.
Excellent work. Comments from commissioners? Dr. Escott?
Thank you for the report tonight, Logan. I appreciate it. Is there any way we can get back to the proposed ordinances on the slide? I want to begin by thanking the Housing Consortium, which is a group of individuals, organizations, government agencies that went together now, how long has it been? 6, 7 years ago, to start the process of looking at the issue of vacant properties in this city. And with the help of the Greater Ohio Policy Center, one of the recommendations was the establishment of the Vacant Property Registry. And I'm glad to see it now going to incorporate commercial and industrial properties. One of the questions I got asked was, you mean if I own a business, I'm going to have to pay money to register my business? No. Only if you, as a business owner, if that property is vacant, that's what you have to register. This is vacant commercial property. So, that building over there needs to be registered if we pass this. That building over there needs to be registered if we pass this. 2 buildings down High Street need to be registered if we pass this. It's about vacant buildings that must be registered with the city. I'm also glad to see us increasing the civil fine for non-registration. Personally, I'd like to bump it even higher, but that's my own personal opinion. Because I want people to be accountable for the structures they own in this city, both residential and commercial if they're vacant. So thank you very much for your report. It looks like we're making some progress in this area. This coupled with the receivership program is making a difference. We're saving some great old homes. We're getting rid of some safety and eyesores in our community, and we are holding the owners properly accountable for their facilities. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you for presenting tonight. I just have two questions. I think I saw they have 180 other customers. Are any of them similar size to Springfield, like with a similar and any success rates?
I do believe that there are some municipalities that they're working with, keeping in mind they only work with municipalities that are similar in size. Would have to get those specifics, but I did ask recently if they're working with any other customers in the state of Ohio, and they do have one other partner that they're working with.
And then I guess my next question piggybacks off of that. Would the fee increases be similar to what other cities of our size kind of have done?
So funny enough, I asked them what was the average price. We have $125 for residential and $300 semi-annually for commercial. And they did say that just across their 180 customers, that all of them were around $600 annually for both residential and commercial. So the fees that we're looking to move forward with are on the lower side of what, HARE is seeing across the country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
As someone who's had a business in downtown Springfield for 11 years and seen the progress down here, I'm really happy to see this progress and moving forward and addressing all the vacancies in the community, but especially commercial. So thank you for being ambitious around this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn the work session?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. We have no hearings, right? Yep. Okay, the formal meeting for the City Commission is called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mrs. Houston?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Rue?
Here, please stand for the invocation and pledge. Father, I ask that you give us guidance tonight. We ask for your peace in this place. We thank you for the freedoms that we've been given. In your name, amen.
Pledge allegiance. Aye.
Is there a motion to approve minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Rue, sorry. Sorry.
Before we begin comments, I have a statement. The City Commission remains committed to creating a conducive environment for constructive and productive dialogue and engagement for the community. Public comments will remain at the beginning of our legislative meeting, followed by following the passage of the minutes from the previous meeting. Those wishing to speak must fill out a comment card in the way we've described in the past. It must be filled out in its complete order, and you have to present a state driver's license or driver's ID or an ID providing when you fill out the card that you're residing in Springfield and Clark County. Those are the folks that will be eligible to speak during this period. Comment cards will be accepted up to 15 minutes after roll call at the start of the meeting. So that's 15 minutes from a minute ago. Those who are determined to have provided false information on the card will be ineligible to speak at this meeting as well as the next regular meeting of the City Commission. We are truly committed to making the meeting an environment where people have an opportunity to share their ideas, thoughts, and concern pertaining to city business. While honoring First Amendment principles, the City Commission reserves the right to regulate the time, the place, and the manner of public comments to ensure that proceedings remain orderly, respectful, and conducive to constructive dialogue. While we fully respect the First Amendment rights of all individuals, disruptions or any conduct that impedes the orderly progress of the meeting will not be tolerated. Should any individual be escorted or asked to leave due to disruptive behavior on 3 separate occasions, they will be notified that they are considered trespassed and barred from attending any further City Commission meetings. After the public comment period, City Commission may respond to matters brought forth during public comment period and will also direct the city manager and staff to answer questions posed during the public comment period. If a question asks required additional information, the city manager and staff, they will follow up with the individuals within the next several business days and post those answers to the city website. We'll begin our comments. I have several cards tonight. We'll start with Beth Donahue of 220 Montgomery Avenue.
Mayor and members of the Springfield community, SDVC conducted analysis of the Springfield Police Department arrests and charges of 2023. Data was obtained from the Clark County and municipal court databases. A total of 2,644 identities accounted for 3,578 charges. Of these identities, 2,075 or 78.5% of offenders experienced a single arrest in 2023. 569 or 21.5% of offenders were arrested multiple times in 2023. 72%, 1,903 of the offenders had prior arrests with the Springfield Police Department at some point in their lifetime. A substantial portion of criminal activity in Springfield is driven by repeat offenders. First, the municipal court prosecutor DeBartolo has failed to prosecute offenders with misdemeanor charges successfully. Less than 35% of Prosecutor DeBartolo's total caseload make it into court. The escalating criminal misdemeanor charges are rarely upgraded to a felony, or the grand jury has failed to indict the offender on felony charges. DeBartolo's failures have led to violent offenders serving little to no time or offenders' cases becoming dismissed. This means offenders are free to keep committing crimes. There is a direct correlation to the Clark County Jail overcrowding and DeBartolo's lack of performance with misdemeanor crimes. The county prosecutor, Dan Driscoll, could attempt a successful prosecution of felony offenders, leading offenders to state prison sentences rather than county jail confinement. Victim protection and witness cooperation is also a driver in reoffending. Witness intimidation and fear among victims raise serious concerns about the city's ability to ensure victim safety and facilitate witness cooperation. The city has failed to protect its citizens while offenders demand their right to face their accuser. This effect can be seen in the data as over 90% of victims affected by domestic violence related crime have their cases dismissed. The offender demands to face their accuser, and their cases are then dismissed at the prosecutor's request due to unavailability of the witness. The city does not have a crime problem. The city has a reoffender problem, which is perpetuated by you, Mayor, because you allow Prosecutor DeBartolo to keep his job. Thank you.
Glenda Bailey, 732 Mound.
So, first of all, I'm here to talk about a certain property, but I'm curious why we have to give our addresses, but none of you have to give your addresses.
1845 North Fountain Boulevard. Go ahead.
What about the rest of
Because
you?
you're addressing me only. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have 3 minutes. Go right ahead.
That's what I thought. Y'all don't want anyone to know where you live, do you?
Sorry,
So, I'm here to talk about 802 Kenton Street, the Haitian Flop House, and I want to know why you allowed that house that Mr. Estrup just said, we're saving great old homes. Why didn't you save that one? Why didn't you go to 802 Kenton Street, the Haitian Flop House, when there was 60 plus Haitians living there, when the toilets had been taken out, when there were people using the bathroom down open sewer lines? Why didn't you do your job? All right. We're supposed to have, was that house on the vacant property registry? Is it on there now? That house that's been going on for over a year, and it was just condemned on December 6th. What took so long? That's my question. Also, Logan Cobbs, why do you need a vendor like Hera to collect the vacant homes? Is that something you're not capable of doing? Do you guys delegate everything you do to other people? Are any of you capable of doing anything on your own? That's what we pay you for. We don't pay you to delegate.
Diane Daniels, 40 Hedgley Road.
I prefer not to film.
Man, this is a public meeting. Everything's filmed. Go ahead.
Mayor and others, collectively, you have seriously underestimated our resolve and commitment to uncover every single local individual and organization or NGO responsible for or profiting off of the mass migration targeted upon Springfield. Do you think that we have only one Facebook page? There are multiple. Some of us have two, some of us three or more. Most of us have an X account or Truth account, or both. We have utilized this network for investigative purposes and to broaden our reach in the telling of our story. Mayor Rue, you and your associates, both past and present, have set up the perfect storm for Springfield. That storm is coming fast, and you and your associates, both past and present, have only yourselves to blame. The concept of the importation and recruitment of a replacement population as a panacea for our declining population and associated dwindling workforce is about to blow up right straight in your face. The importation and recruitment of this replacement population who will work willingly for half wages, no benefits, long hours, and be forced into communal living is nothing more or less than modern day indentured servitude. We fought a civil war to put an end to that practice. Do you really think that this did anyone, or was it just another shiny bauble, as so many Springfield projects have been? Black building right over there is a perfect example. What part of temporary protective status did you not understand? Obviously, the temporary part. As for a path to citizenship, one exists. Very simple. It's a naturalization process, not a magic wand. Did you, Mayor Ruth, think that providing immigration advice to the President of the United States was going to go over well? You just increased the size of the target times 100. The city of Springfield operates on a city manager style of governance, whereby the day-to-day operations are handled by the city manager. Either of two things are true or both are true. If the city or county government official selected or elected, or city non-government official selected or elected knew of the chaos to come, ensue with the mass migration to our city and did nothing about it, you are complicit in what comes next. If any city or county government official elected or selected, or city or county non-government official elected or selected, who claims they did not know of the chaos that would ensue, is incompetent to hold their selected or elected position. In my opinion, I would not place the city manager in charge of a 2-car toy train set on 4 foot of oval track. As for the mayor, I would not at this point leave you responsible for a small fishbowl with 1 guppy in it. As for the city and county government and non-government, both selected and elected, who had a hand in this chaos, this will not have a happy ending. But I do have this to say to you. Karl Marx
Thank you, Diane. Your
would be very
time's up.
proud of you.
Melissa Rexroth, 1353 Willow Road.
Melissa Rexroth. I'm formally requesting you stop airing our address as a victim of domestic violence. I would appreciate not opening myself up to more harassment, as I'm sure you can relate. I currently live in the county, but my business is in downtown. I've personally been affected by the decisions of Springfield City, and I'm concerned that my voice does not matter. I was physically abused from 2010 to 2013, which initiated my hearing malformation and the physical problems I deal with today. My First Amendment right has been trampled by Springfield City. August 2022, I filed for protection order against my abuser. My lawyer came into the hearing late, did not bring any evidence with him. We only had what I brought with me that day. My lawyer handed his lawyer the pictures. Let me back up here. When he came in, he asked my abuser lawyer to come into a room where they could speak privately. And when they came out, my lawyer told me, "You don't have enough to win this. This is on you. You're going to have to sell it to the judge." As my lawyer handed his lawyer my photos showing bruises on my arm, choke marks on my neck, and a butcher knife stabbed into my table, his lawyer started laughing. Needless to say, my protection order was denied. I made a Facebook post posting those 3 photos. I don't name names, I never have. I don't name my abuser. I didn't name the lawyer. But I said, this lawyer must be as sick as him when he sees these photos and laughs. Guess what? Next family hearing, I was court ordered to not disparage judges, lawyers, or judges on social media. That was all I had said. Again, never naming names. So who in Springfield has freedom of speech? I certainly don't. I've been personally silenced by Springfield. In these meetings, we get 3 minutes, and it appears you guys are able to censor what we say in here. The last meeting was my first meeting attending in person. I was appalled and shocked at the commissioners being on their phones and laughing while citizens were voicing their concerns. I see you, Mr. Rue, keep watching that clock. Members of the board would address people in the crowd and in turn would tell those same people, "Don't respond to me, I'm speaking to you." I'm still in shock at what I witnessed at that meeting. I don't agree with much of anything that was said at that meeting. However, I do believe everyone has a right to their opinion, even if I vehemently disagree. I am not responsible for what someone else chooses to say, only my reaction or lack thereof. I hold the board to a higher standard, and I'm in disbelief at the disregard it shows its citizens.
Thank you for your important comments. Tina Siebold,
I look forward to
1605
seeing you
Shelby
again
Drive.
in 2 weeks where I'll hold you
Ma'am,
hostage once
if
again
you keep
for 3
talking, I'm
minutes.
sorry. Thank you. Tina Siebold, 1605 Shelby Drive. Shelby Drive.
Hi, good evening. I'll make it a little bit lighter around here tonight. So there's a Martin Luther King quote that I've been thinking about lately. It states that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. With that being said, I want to thank Mayor Rue for stopping and removing the person that spoke blatant racist remarks at the last meeting. I wanted also to let all commissioners know how much your work for the city is appreciated. I wanted to remind the commissioners the majority of the citizens recognize how challenging it has been to be in your positions since August of 2023. I wish I had the answer as to what could unify the city. At one point, I was hopeful that maybe we could have taken the opportunity to shine a light, educate, and start to heal so many wounds that exist primarily due to race in the city. But considering diversity, equity, and inclusion are being removed from our country's vocabulary, I doubt that will happen. There's so many good things, though, in Springfield. There's bright spots all over our city if we take a minute to look. One that I would like to bring to everyone's attention is Cliff Park High School is hosting their annual Black History Museum this Wednesday and Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. I would encourage everyone to attend. This is a great opportunity to see what amazing things the students of Cliff Park are doing and to celebrate Black history. In closing, I look forward to a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, their country of origin, their sexual orientation, the gender they identify, or the pronouns they use, but by the content of their character. Thank you.
Arlene Yearly, 1204. Doesn't run.
Okay. Biden, DeWine, and people in power in this community have put this city in turmoil. State Highway Patrol, driving simulators, and pouring taxpayer money into the problem have not worked. We're still in a bad predicament. A while back, I spoke with my cousin about a Haitian man slowly backing into my car while I was stopped at a red light while totally ignoring the blowing of my car horn. She listened and sympathized, but unlike me, she's in the silent majority. February the 19th, this cousin and her husband were parked at a car wash when the car in front of them slammed into their car. A Haitian man got out of the car. He handed the policeman, taking the report, a folder with insurance information in it. The next day, his insurance company called my cousin to inform them that the man's insurance expired on February the 14th. This is happening back then and still. You can try to convince the people of this community, this state, this country, that the presence of all these immigrants have benefited the American people. But the facts don't bear out this opinion. Legal immigrants have till August, and illegal immigrants should get out now. If our governor, city officials, or sympathizing citizens aid or abet these people in any way over our American citizens and this federal mandate, the silent majority, like my cousin, won't be silent anymore. Our mayor said abrupt deportations would harm our city's economy. Well, so did the abrupt influx. We weather the influx, we can weather the deportations. Abraham Lincoln ended slavery. Trump and everyone on the Trump train will end it again.
James Stewart, 220 Montgomery Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. Didn't really want to be here tonight because I was hoping we could have some communication via email. I want to thank you. You sent, I believe Jason Vise sent it, and then through your legal sent the call for service information. Greatly appreciated. As a criminologist, I can't really do too much with that. I think it's best used for the police department. They can do better things with it. So I asked the chief tonight if any of those reports were posted, and she pointed to the website and said, yeah, they are. And I looked at them, and they're in the style of Neighbors, or they're quoted as Neighbors. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So that was a good thing. Hey, through communication, we got things fixed. However, these reports are labeled as Neighbors. They don't have a legend, and they don't have the traditional crime categories such as property crime, violent crimes. And then they're not, I don't know if they're calls for service again on these. I'm really having a hard time figuring it out. Again, I've got 30 years of experience dealing with stuff. So let me ask you about this too. On that, I don't know if they're arrests, and I don't know if the numbers are identities, right? People, just strictly people being arrested, or just the charge. And as you know, there's a person can get booked on multiple charges. So I just, if we can get an email, and I think the public would like to know also. So if we could just have just communication, that's all. Kind of define what it is. Maybe have a legend. Because there's a lot of people that are concerned about crime, and they want to do well. right? They're altruistic. They really want to help. Most people that get into my career want to help. And if we can do that, that would be great. I think I got a little time left. So, hey, thank you, City Manager. I appreciate it. I appreciate the legal department coming in on that stuff. And hopefully we can get, a good line of communication on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Jeffrey Allen, 503 Monaco.
Good evening, everyone. Here we are again. We were here back in the summertime, and now we've got to this point where, people are really truly showing their colors. Okay.
Sir, just make sure you're addressing me. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I've been here, as I said before, in Springfield all my life, except for my service time. My father, grandfather, a great-great-grandfather, all here since about 1850, okay? The Allens came in 1880, but the other side came before then. So I've got a pretty good experience in this town, okay? I know the history. I know what's going on. People better wake up. These threats, these innuendos, these things that are going to happen in the future, really? Is that what you want? Who wants that? Raise your hand. Do you really want it? Because you headed towards it. I'm just going to say that and I'm going to be done.
Jerry Atkins, 3674 East National Road.
First, I'd like to mention, I don't know who was doing the work, but whoever did the patch repair, Thelma Road, did a fantastic job. There's no dips and mountains and everything else where it usually is there. Pretty smooth. I travel that a lot. They were replacing pipes, I think, along there. So whoever it was did a great job. I saw on Newsweek where Mayor Rue was pushing back against Mr. Trump and his TPS, saying it would harm the city economy and the immigrant families. Well, TPS has always been temporary. It seems like there's been some misunderstanding on that. And I really think there should be a lot more effort put on helping the citizens of Springfield that have been here for lifetimes, like the last gentleman that spoke, rather than somebody that's here on a temporary status from day one. In 2020, there was a city was hosting a homeless conference. Public health crisis was mentioned at that time. And Carl Ruby said the city had up to $3 million to help. Where'd that money go? I know there's one gentleman that's putting out of his pocket that's doing a lot for the homeless. I know the executive end was a big moment of discussion for quite a bit. Still is. I know there 1.4 million was what I believe homeless or Home Full was trying to get from the city to run that, with another 350 or 375,000 coming from the county, like 1.7 million. Why couldn't you have taken half of that and given to Barron to run that facility instead of him making his own money out to run the place up the street? I mean, I'm sure he could have done a fantastic job for half what you were going to pay those people. You know, he just Have you made any effort to try to do something with him? I mean, he seems like he's the only one that's stepping up. You've got a lot of, churches, NGOs coming in here, bringing signs, supporting people, but they're not supporting the homeless. Why? I mean, I just don't understand it. There's so much talk about how great the Haitians are here. But, we had the one Haitian there on Durr Road, shot and killed his wife, girlfriend, whatever, left the baby in the house with his mother, ran down 68, got 41, shot himself, and died in the hospital. Not the type of people we really want in our community, I don't think. And, there's other cases. I had one gentleman.
Thank you, Terry. Your time's up. Amanda Richardson, 1810 Charles Street.
My name is Amanda Richardson. I was born in Springfield and have lived here for most of my life. I'm here today to express my frustration at the City Commission. I want to know why, when folks come here to complain about the State of Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles issuing driver's licenses to specific Black people that they don't like, why you, the City of Springfield government, won't do anything about it. The City of Springfield has nothing to do with the issuance of driver's licenses because it's done by the BMV in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, but why won't you just illegally snatch people's driver's licenses from them? Who cares if you open up the city to lawsuits and criminal prosecution? I have no idea what I'm angry about, and I want you to do something equally stupid about it. My taxes help pay for your ridiculously small salaries, so why won't you just do any dumb thing I demand? On that note, I'd also like Chief Elliott of the Springfield Police Department to explain why, for the last 5 years, when I have called to report some fat guy named Nick in a red and white fursuit breaking into my house every Christmas Eve to leave behind his junk, the City of Springfield Police Department won't take my complaints seriously. It's not like I'm complaining about something that isn't real and demanding a response to my own personal nonsense. Also, I want to know why the Springfield Police Department isn't deporting people. I know the U.S. Constitution and numerous Supreme Court cases over the years have explicitly ruled that immigration enforcement is solely the responsibility of the federal government. But why won't the City of Springfield Police Department just break the law and do whatever I want? I told you before, I have main character syndrome and the entire world revolves around me, so why don't you just do whatever nonsense I demand? Why don't you stand up and do 10 jumping jacks right now? Do you just hate the citizens of Springfield since you won't kowtow to any random, nonsensical, and even illegal request? What is this, some kind of society where we have laws and rules to follow? How ridiculous. Oh, and I know you all have nothing to do with Springfield City Schools since there's a school board that serves over that, but I'm going to complain to you anyway because I can't be bothered to learn how my local government works. I'm here to yell at clouds like Abe Simpson, okay? I want to know why you don't just kick out poor performing students from the school system. It would make our test scores for the district go up. Sure, it's a violation of civil rights of children, some of the most vulnerable people in our city, but I don't care about that because caring about other people in society is what losers do. And I'm not a loser like you guys are who try to care for everyone in the city. If you're not going to represent my singular specific interests above everyone else in this entire city, then clearly you're not doing your jobs and should be replaced. Clearly, I have no idea what you even do or what our city government is supposed to do, but you should be replaced by someone who will just be openly racist to citizens and generate a ton of lawsuits that will drain city funds to defend, which I will then complain about why the potholes aren't being fixed despite all the money going to defend lawsuits. Because let me be clear about this. I'm mad at the world and have nothing better to do with my time than come down here to the commission meetings to complain about the dumbest possible things I can imagine that the city has absolutely no control over. Thank you.
Neil Crandall, 2779 West Jackson Road. If you would like to go to the microphone, Neil Crandall. Okay, thank you. Cindy Barton, 2889 Beard Drive.
Hi, I would like to also address, since I'm a second generation family here in Springfield, and I know why my family came here to this area to better themselves from Kentucky. There was more prosperity, there was more choices, there was more for people to leave that state and come here with Navistar, with Ohio Electric, with GM and Frigidaire. All of them is hopping. How do we ruin it all? How do we ruin it all? I'm more connected to the Dayton area because of my dad's employment at GM. but I lived in Springfield. I don't understand how a once demanding industry like we had, is gone. I don't understand how we have turned into such a poverty-stricken area. I don't understand how the money, the marketplace, the rental, which I think you had made a comment back in 2020, Mr. Rue, about keeping rent at a limit. But it's astronomical now, very astronomical. Jobs don't pay what they're supposed to. That's why we can bring in others. We can pay them cheaper and give them government assistance. That's called indentured servants. Indentured servants coming to help themselves, hoping that these people will help them get a better life, get a better education, just like everybody else has come to America. But they were to be given freedom after 7 years. But the powers to be were greedy and had all that property, so they couldn't farm. The Nathaniel Bacon Rebellion, that was Nathaniel Bacon going up against his brother-in-law because he was jealous of how much money that he saw Berkeley having. Now, we want to get truthful. There's the truth. It was an uprising against the Navajo Indians, and he died in that battle. So when we want to go after more land and more power, that's coming back not just to the Haitians or the blacks, it's coming back to Irish and Scottish and the own English. But you can't get ahead if you're never let loose.
Ken Barron, Seelig, 424 South Fountain Avenue.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm just down here with my 2-week report. 85 days in, I can tell you that I ain't mad. I'm scared. Scared what's going to happen in 5 days when I shut that down. I woke up there this morning to 58 people that were there. And there was no viable option for any place else other than the warming center and whatever I could throw together for them to eat. Very grateful to everyone. You know who you are. I don't need to name people who have helped. Tired. But I'm not done. Just because that ends in 5 days, I promise you, wait till you see the next chapter. Because we have a need here. Some of the numbers, I like putting them out there. 44 people have left that gymnasium for long-term drug and treatment program. And I wish we were allowed to applaud that. 19 people have accepted Christ in that gym up there. And just 2 days ago, I'm proud to say that 3 people were baptized in that little church. We're making a difference up there. I say we. I told everybody on December 2nd at 6 o'clock when I started on this endeavor, the handful of misfits that I had in the room, we were going to do this. I said, if this fails, it'll be I failed. I want everybody to know that. I failed. But if this succeeds, we did it. I've never made it about me. I don't want it to be about me. It's not about, we lose direction, okay? If I've learned nothing else in the last 85 days, I've learned that throwing rocks, all you do is lose ground. You know, are some people need hit with rocks? You betcha. I'm old school like that. But it doesn't, that gets nowhere. Let's work. I implore the mayor, city council, whoever's going to be on it next week, if someone to quit or whatever, the city officials, work with me. I got a plan. I have meetings set up. Thank you guys for doing that. And I'll be back here in, I think, 2 weeks or maybe 2 meetings from now to do my little PowerPoint presentation and share some stuff. Some really beautiful things have happened right up the street here. And in the midst of some ugly things, 0 people have lost their lives as far as the homeless people. But I'm going to take my last 15 seconds and tell you about one death that we did have. When I couldn't be out on the street, Bill Monaghan stepped up and said, I'll go take firewood to the camps. I'll go take food to them. He caught pneumonia. He went septic. he came home from the hospital, and 2 days later, he was making chili for the homeless and passed. And I want to honor my friend Bill, because he put his money where his mouth was, and he was the hands and feet of Jesus right up till the day he died, as far as I'm concerned. And nobody will ever convince me otherwise.
Thank you, Baron. West Fabian. West Fabian, 2121 Olympic Street.
Well, I'm humbled to speak after that. Springfield has been known as the home city back in the day. It's been a home city for all kinds of people. And there are far more positive statements that can be expressed on behalf of this community than perhaps we've heard. We face serious problems. And I know that you, as a commission, are listening. However, I'm grateful that we have civic leadership that does not shrink from dealing with these issues. And there are private individuals who have sacrificed on behalf of their brothers and sisters, and I celebrate that. I also celebrate the racial, cultural diversity, including our immigrant neighbors, which is a real treasure and a strength for us in this home city. May we live up to that designation. One of the greatest voices for liberty and justice for all. We give that pledge of allegiance, liberty and justice for all. He spoke of a dream of a beloved community. And I want to thank you, our civic leaders, for your dedication to just that kind of a dream for our home town, a home city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, please, Marshall. Michael Morris, 2159 Olympic Street.
Good evening. As much as we are the home city, we are also the champion city. Probably we've forgotten how to be the champion city. And one of the things, or the tone of what I want to speak about tonight is that, you know, I used to remember coming in here and you couldn't find a spectator with a search warrant. There was nobody here, maybe 2 or 3 staff members. And now we come in and it's packed. I love it. You may not like it because of the way that people were railing on you, but I love it that democracy is here and is in action. But one thing that I see missing, that I can continue to see missing, is the mindset of the community. We have lost it. We don't know how to be champions anymore. And I don't mean this with any disrespect to folks that are down and out, but we have a poverty mentality in this community. And it's been that way for 20 or 30 years. We've lost jobs. Asking the lady, NAFTA laid it to Springfield. We lost more jobs per capita than any city in the United States between 2000 and 2010. That hurts. That takes a long time to crawl back out of it. But the mindset, and I challenge, the reason I stopped here tonight, my office is right across the street, and I thought I'm going to come over tonight. The thing that I challenge you is to inspire us, lead us. Let's get out of the poverty thinking, the loser's limp, the woe is me. The poor are always going to be with us. The Bible tells us that. We need to do things to help those who are less advantaged than us. But we concentrate on that all the time. Every time I hear things like this, it's always about the poor, the down and out, the whatever, the crime. Okay, let's start addressing those. And on a personal note, trash, debris, speeders, loud music, properties that are derelict. Those are the kind of things that voters don't like. And they tend not to vote for people that aren't taking care of them. And we've got a lot of it in our community. And we really need to have the resources that you have in front of you to be directed towards those things, whether it's more policing, more code enforcement officers, or just more teeth. I'm not for taking rights away from people, private property rights and things of that nature. But when many of us have to live near these things, it's upsetting. And so, last thing, the streets. I know we've got a lot of streets that need to be repaved. Let's get on that as in a major form. Thank you.
Thank you. Devon Hendricks, 121 Wilson Avenue. Evan.
How's it going? But it's been a long time since I've been here. I decided to come back and speak. I still see the hate all deep down in people's bones. Like, y'all can't even get it out of y'all. It's very, very sad. Like, you know what I mean? And going back to the 2010, when the jobs was out, it was the Asians that came back and restored us a little bit. You know what I mean? You can find that in American History on Netflix. But American Factory, matter of fact.
Let's just direct your comments to me, please,
I
sir.
wasn't talking to them. And yeah, so and shout out to the Haitian community once again. They dealing with it now. Black folks have been dealing with it forever in a day. You get what I'm saying? So it's the same old thing. Hate. That's all I hear. They come in here, instead of being out here in Springfield, putting boots to the ground, like cleaning it up with the Arthur Solomons, or being with the youth like the Dion Greens, or, being at the Warman Center. Y'all ain't out here. Y'all just coming up here and just talking on this microphone like that's all y'all got to do. Y'all can't put boots to the ground because y'all don't have it in y'all.
Devin, I need you to address the commission with commission concerns about the city, not to the audience.
I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, man, I just been frustrated, but because this is my city and I love it, and I'm doing things, and the Haitian help build this, up with the workforce. What we gonna do when they leave? You get what I'm saying? Because the people that's just coming up here, they ain't got no jobs. They just, they don't know what to do. They just gonna complain about something else. So yeah, I'm done, man. But y'all gotta grow up.
So, thank you. So you can leave. We're going to have comments. Okay, we got order here. Everybody good? Comments from commissioners? Dr. Estroff.
The question was asked about why we are going out for a private contract is actually very straightforward in terms of our ability to answer it. Sometimes it's cheaper and more efficient for us to contract with private sector companies than it is to have full-time employees devoted to that. You're seeing that demonstrated at the federal level right now by the Department of Government Efficiency, where there is calls for less employment of government employees and more contracts with outside companies. Since about 15 years ago, the city has 115 fewer positions today than it did 15 years ago. We have trimmed the payroll by approximately 115 payroll positions. So we understand the need to run an efficient operation. And part of our ability to do that is to be able to contract with private companies and utilize their expertise and knowledge and do so at a more efficient cost for us. So we're looking at both effectiveness and efficiency. Thank you.
Commissioner?
A couple comments. Some of the issues that are discussed in here are better suited for our state representatives. And I know I have to lean on them as well when there are things that are out of our control at this area and this forum and at this level of government. So I would just like to share your state rep's information. That's Bernie Willis, phone number 614-466-2038. And your new senator, who Kyle Kohler was just here, I think, last session or the session before, to introduce himself as your state senator. His number is 614-466-3780. Also, I asked the city manager to possibly, update us on a broader spectrum with the homeless, and maybe there's an opportunity for Nehemiah Foundation and Sheltered Inc. to possibly come here and also share what is happening within their organization. So again, a broader brush. As we know, it is an issue not only just in our city, but multiple cities. And that's another thing I would like to mention. Other cities reach out to us. I travel around for work in our state and the surrounding area of our counties. And I go to Wilmington, and there's homeless people in their businesses. I go to these other communities, and I see the same thing we have here. We're not unique in that way. I see other communities addressing immigration in their council meetings like we are. I see an opposite side of the spectrum with the addressing of immigration in other councils and commissions. I see discussion about increasing housing development and TIFs. And this is I just want to remind everyone, and I, of course, have been in this seat for a year, a little past a year, and I've learned so much because as you brought complaints before me, I've had to research, what is everybody else doing? How's everybody else addressing this? Are we the only ones? Is this unique to us? And it's always no. A lot of people are dealing with the same issues. And I'd like to be more effective at the local level. I really would. But I do remember there are people in government that have a larger, broader voice than I do as a commissioner when we deal with state issues and federal issues. And I have to take my complaints straight to them too, because I vote for them as well. So it's just a soft reminder to the community as we're trying to work through issues here that many communities are trying to get through as well. And I always try to go outside my silo. If you're always with the same people that have the same beliefs, you don't get that experience to get a different perspective. Go outside your silo, sit at many tables, and then get all the information you can so you can make informed decisions after seeing all the different perspectives.
Thank you.
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had two. Brian, I was going to ask you, there was a question specifically about 802 Kenton Street. I was just wondering, number one, if you would be able to kind of let everyone know the process that we go through with code violations and how it escalates and why it may take so long sometimes. And then number two, this question was addressed, I believe, at the last meeting, but in terms of homeless funding, someone had asked why we can't just give money to Barron. And as much as we would love to, would you be able to tell exactly why we have to meet specific federal requirements for this package?
Yes, Commissioner. So starting on the 802 Kenton Street, as with any private property, the city just can't go in. Even when we know there's issues, we have to serve notice to them that there's some sort of violation. The complaint was brought to us actually from Mark Sanders, who brought this property to us. We began investigating it. We sent orders. Those orders, depending on the type of orders, junk and trash, weeds, zoning violation, which overcrowding falls into, they have a period of time where they can rectify. The private property owner has a period. Then once once we observe they have not rectified the issue, they then are issued civil fines, and that starts the process of the civil fines. And then after so much of that, we can proceed, whether it be a court order and so forth. On this one specifically, I know it was a multiple department division approach to looking at this, as well as bringing in outside agencies like the health department and so forth to look at this property once we realized we weren't getting any movement. This is owned by a private property owner actually out of state. And so we were able to finally gain entry because we can't just go into a property without either being invited in or getting a warrant to be able to do that, and able to further gather evidence of overcrowding and specifically unsafe living conditions that were mentioned tonight that led to the condemning of that property and the notice that they had to be able to leave. So it does take a period of time. It's set up that way because, again, private property owners have rights, and we can't just come in and take a property from them that they have purchased. Now, again, we will pursue the track, and we do that with multiple properties. The Vacant Property Registry helps with that. Our Rental Property Registry can help with that. So we're putting tools in place to help hopefully speed up some of that process. As it relates to the homelessness, certainly, so the city of Springfield, whether it's local, state, federal dollars, we have procurement procedures that we have to abide by, whether it's by our ordinances, state law, or federal law. And so depending on the type of funding source, we have different regulations. A lot of the funding that comes specifically to us as a community to help with the homelessness situation comes from the federal government. Directly through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so the city, just like other cities, receive funds that are specifically, and you'll see tonight, we actually have a couple potential contracts on here, as we just recently did an RFP, a request for proposal, to be able to award money to help expand or create additional access for those that are displaced, those displaced individuals. But people have to go through that solicitation process and bid. One of the questions was specifically about the Executive Inn and Homeful. At that time, we had done a request for proposal to operate that facility. Homeful was currently operating that, but we put out a request for proposal. Homeful was the only one that submitted a proposal for that specific RFP. Just like the one tonight, we had RFP that went out, and we had two agencies that submitted requesting funding for homeless services. So there's a lot of that goes to the procurement process to make sure those funds, again, depending whether they're federal, state, or local, on the rules that have to be followed and utilizing those.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to walk through, since people questioned and asked about the statement that I made to a couple news sources. Obviously, we've been highlighted throughout the last several weeks and months. And so I want to just, my statement was sent in whole and was used in part. So I'd like to just make sure that you understand clear. Of course, our local news media doesn't use my statement in part. They use it in whole. Jessica's right here, so I'm making sure you know that. So I've also sent it to our local media. But I just want to say, as speaking directly towards the executive order from the president relative to the temporary protective status for individuals from Haiti, I offer this as mayor, as one of 5 commissioners, and for Springfield, Ohio. Springfield's grown obviously grown by 25% in 3 years, thanks to 10 to 12,000 Haitian immigrants who have entered legally under the immigration parole program and qualify for the temporary protective status until February 3rd of 26, as previously understood. They have strengthened our local economy by filling key roles in manufacturing and healthcare, even as their rapid arrival has strained public services. We've never denied that. I firmly believe in protecting our southern border and our borders and reforming our immigration policies. Hasty changes and swift deportation will cause hardworking immigrants to be lost. It will cause chaos and negatively impacting our community. That's as a concern as somebody that faces their constituents face to face. When I see people in pain and concern, it concerns me. While those who commit crimes must be held accountable and face deportation, many other immigrants pay taxes and bolster our community. The policy of the previous federal administration lacked accountability, forcing us to manage an influx rather than promote integration, healthy integration. I encourage this administration to reform federal immigration policies in a way that protects our borders, ensures fairness, and enriches our nation, while also giving immigrants seeking to become productive citizens a clear path forward instead of facing immediate deportation. These individuals are given a sense of hope. They were given a sense of hope and a sense of security through the temporary protective status policy. These individuals, which they've given that hope, we must understand as United States citizens that this temporary protective status has been embraced by several administrations. The United States must continue to be a beacon of hope and a torchbearer of democracy. That's what I believe. And when I see people in pain, I get concerned. And so this is my statement. I believe it's fair, and it's from me. I'm not speaking for the 5 commissioners, but I am speaking as mayor of the city. We have had a concern. We have a concern of influx. We have a housing strain. Those things were never ignored. And but I do believe that people have been brought here, have been given a sense of hope, and it's hard to see that hope dash. I think there's plenty of jobs for everybody that wants a job in the United States. There's plenty of jobs. If you want to work, you can find a job. And so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Again, my statement was taken, and I saw it parceled out a little bit in these articles, and that's fine. But you just understand what my heart is in this whole thing is that there's people in pain. Yes, they're here under a temporary status. If they can have a clear path, if they're here to be productive citizens, to make good and become Americans, then let's show them a path. That's what I'm saying. And as a First Amendment person, I can be one that can express my speech and my understanding of how I'd like the federal government to respond. And that's why I made this statement. Thank you. Go ahead if there's any other staff questions we can answer.
Yeah, 2 other items. I know Commissioner Houston covered a couple of it. I wanted to add on HERA as well, the contract with HERA. The main component of that is they are a software company, so they provide the software. So a lot of times what ends up happening specifically in foreclosure cases is a property falls to a bank. And those banks are very difficult and challenging to find out exactly who is responsible and who owns that. With HERA and other companies like HERA, they have access through their software to be able to identify who actually owns the property once it moves through that foreclosure process, which helps significantly. And again, a reminder that our code enforcement division will continue to inspect all the properties, issue the orders, issue fines on that non-registration component. And then the last piece too, comments were made about essentially recidivism and the high number that we see in our community. That is, that's a problem, Springfield and other places. But in partnership, the Clark County Board of Commissioners hired a position, I think 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, where they hired Brooke Wagner to come in, and she is the reentry coordinator, because a big component of that is for those that are coming out of jail. It can be difficult to get a job, to get a driver's license, to get access to the things they need so that they can go back and be productive. And that's the challenge that they face when they no longer, the barriers that exist for them to be productive. What ends up happening, they might re-enter because, they commit another crime that gets them back into jail because they're struggling, and it's a never-ending cycle. So Brooke Wagner and her team at the county are really looking at that. How can we help those that are leaving the jail and help them re-enter into the community so that they can be productive and thrive? So I just wanted to add that too, that Brooke is a great resource.
Thank you. Commissioner Estrop, you have a comment?
Yes, your comment, Mr. Heck, reminded me. There is a lot of frustration within the courts, within the prosecutor's office, I know among our own police, over what's happening at the jail. The jail is simply too small for our community, and very serious efforts need to be undertaken. Please understand, the jail is operated not by the city of Springfield, but by the sheriff's department. So those of you who are interested and concerned about the jail situation, I want to encourage you to go to the Clark County Commission meetings and voice your concern to the commissioners, because it will fall to them to determine how best to solve the issue of a new jail or an expanded jail or whatever they choose to do, it belongs, that decision, with the Clark County Commission, not with the city of Springfield. But clearly, there is a growing recognition we have a problem. And I encourage you, if you have ideas, if you have suggestions or concerns, please make them known to the Clark County Commissioners, who are ultimately responsible for funding through the sheriff's office for the operation of the jail. Thank you.
Please, you can, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting the meeting. If you can go ahead and leave. You can go ahead and leave, please. I'm trying to keep order in the meeting. If you would just go ahead and leave. Thank you. Commissioner?
I just wanted to add on to Dr. Estrop's comments regarding the jail. Having talked with one of the Clark County, actually all of the commissioners from the county recently, I know that the jail is one of their big priorities, and I know that they're working on gaining funding, at least from the state, to move forward with a new jail. So they are working on it, but you are correct to address your concerns to them.
Thank you. I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess and we'll continue with our formal meeting. Are you good? Oh, she's in the bathroom. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue on with the business portion of our meeting. Please. Okay. We'll ask the clerk to continue with first readings by title only.
Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the contract with Smart Bill Corp. For utility bill printing and mailing services for an amount not to exceed $440,000. Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the billing services agreement with Acumed Billing Incorporated for medical billing services and accounts receivable activities for an amount not to exceed $140,000, and confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from July 6, 2024 to the effective date of this ordinance. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 2 to the Clark County City of Springfield Geographical Information System 2021 to 2025 consortium agreement with the Board of Clark County Commissioners, Clark County, Ohio, and the Clark County Auditor for the shared geographical information system to increase the agreement for an amount not to exceed $25,781.80 for a total amount not to exceed $270,219.80 for the 5-year term. Approving and authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing and cooperative agreement by and among the City of Springfield, Ohio, the Melody Park, the New Community Authority, and 40 Partners LLC for its designee to provide for development in the city. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient agreement with Sheltered Inc. for comprehensive solutions for addressing homelessness in an amount not to exceed $302,784. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient agreement with Project Woman of Ohio for comprehensive solutions for addressing homelessness in an amount not to exceed $50,980. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the subrecipient funding agreement with Springfield Promise Neighborhood, extend the period of performance to June 30, 2025, and confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from January 1, 2025 to the effective date of this ordinance. Amending ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the Codified Ordinances of the City of Springfield, Ohio, by amending certain provisions of Chapter 1380 entitled Administration of Vacant Property Registration Program. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Para Property Registry, LLC, to provide vacant property administration registration services at no cost to the city, and therein making it revenue neutral. Confirming and approving a continuum of care program grant agreement with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in an amount not to exceed $219,935, and authorizing the city manager and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligation under said grant agreement and comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient funding agreement between the city and Springfield Metropolitan Housing Authority to conduct a Springfield Permanent Supportive Housing Program funded tenant-based rental assistance and administration program in an amount not to exceed $219,935, and confirming and approving related expenditures from October 1, 2024 to the passage of this ordinance.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development incentive agreement with Janea LLC to provide for sewer services to real property outside the city limits. Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the general professional engineering services agreement with Carpenter Marty Transportation Incorporated for professional engineering services for an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Thank you. City Manager, could you highlight a few things, explain what we'll be voting on in 2 weeks?
Yes, the first two items relate to our utility billing, printing and mailing services for that, so a contract to provide for that billing. This is a 2-year contract that'll run through 2027, and the next one is our agreement with Acumed for billing services. Acumed handles our EMS billing. So when an individual utilizes transport through our EMS, they handle sending that information on to the insurance company and so forth. I mentioned earlier we have 2 contracts or subrecipient agreements with Sheltered Inc. and one with Project Woman. The first with Sheltered is a combined request between Sheltered and Nehemiah Foundation for homelessness services. And if you notice, for comprehensive solutions for addressing homelessness. So the idea was to look for ways to expand current capacity. And so specifically with Sheltered, one of the things that they proposed in their submittal was currently the men's shelter, Hartley House, operates 12 hours a day. This will expand. They will be able to expand with these additional dollars to 24/7 coverage, which obviously is a positive, good thing versus having people to continually displace throughout the day. And then Project Woman had requested, an annual allotment that they usually receive to continue to provide support to those that are impacted by domestic violence, specifically women that have faced and experienced domestic violence. And then Logan covered the 2 items in work session, but the vacant property registry and the updates to that, and then the subsequent contract with Hera to provide the software solution as well as back-end support for that.
Excellent. Other comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Thank you, Mayor Rue. I'm very pleased to see item number 05725 and 058-25. That's great news. Add services to obviously a very needy population here in the city. As I said previously, I will support the improvement from my perspective around the vacant property registry, and I'm glad to see us move towards commercial and industrial property also. Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners on first readings? Commissioner?
Yes. I also would like to address the homelessness allotment going to Sheltered Inc. and the Project Woman and other resources. I just look forward to seeing the city and the county work together to find sustainable solutions long term in addressing our homelessness, not just the homeless right now, but prevention and getting to our younger folks and getting that prevention and mental health a part of it as well. Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners on first readings? We'll continue with second readings.
Amending the zoning map of Springfield, Ohio by rezoning 0.95 acres at 0 East Street, Springfield, from M1 General Manufacturing District to M2 Heavy Manufacturing District.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract with Tony Smith, DBA, Tony Smith Wrecking and Trucking for the demolition of various parcels throughout the city to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $16,500 for a total amount not to exceed $335,200 and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are the comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
So I was wondering, Mr. Heck, if you could tell us why this contract. I I usually like decreases.
Yeah.
This one concerns me a little.
No, so specifically, Commissioner, these are properties that we worked with the land bank, with the county on receiving a grant from the state of Ohio to help with demolition. Two of the properties were removed from that contract because those properties, those houses have been put into the hands of people that want to rehab them and try to save them. So
Through
I
our
think it's a
receivership program?
not,
or-
I don't believe through receivership, but as an opportunity just to rehab and save those.
Great, that's good news.
The comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of 6 Ford F-150 trucks of the newest model year available from National Auto Fleet Group for an amount not to exceed $358,345.08 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into the First Amendment to the State Energy Program Grant Agreement for the Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities Grant through the Ohio Department of Development to modify the reporting requirements, and authorizing the city manager, director of finance, and law director to perform all acts and execute all documents considered necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said state energy program grant amendment and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to accept a 2025 Energized Community Grant through the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council in an amount up to $60,694 to be used for implementation of energy savings or energy infrastructure measures, authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement for the acceptance of said grant, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and the director of finance to do all things necessary for the acceptance of the grant and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Approving general salary increases for non-bargaining unit employees pursuant to Section 175.03C of the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, authorizing the city manager to do all things necessary to implement such increases.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners?
Can we just go into this a little bit more? I'm sure that the public would.
Yeah, so, a portion of our employees are covered through collective bargaining agreements. There are a number of employees that are not, considering the non-bargaining unit employee section. And so this is a cost of living adjustment of 2% effective July 1.
And even though this isn't a part of, they're not represented, this also is known by the other bargaining units, and they look to this to see what happens and also maybe see a trickle down on how that's going to play out maybe in the next bargaining opportunities, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you give an example of an individual, like the job category that would fall underneath? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
that's not
as
covered by a collective so city manager's office, most of finance, legal, those types of departments, a lot of the service related that are internal service related function.
Thank you.
The comments from the audience?
I mean, you could just get rid of everybody and have Brian do everything. I mean, I don't know why we don't just do that. Why don't we just have one person run the entire city government? That seems like the smartest thing to me. Just saying.
The comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with A and B Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $421,950.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? Dr. Estrop?
Mr. Heck, if you would, not only on this item, but all the street materials here. How did the bids come in? I know over the past several years, the bids have been going through the roof on street materials. How did we do this year?
Yeah, Commissioner, so obviously these four items are related to that purchase of various street materials and specifically looking at, our asphalt. And we provide multiple vendors or select multiple vendors, so we make sure we continue to have access to plants that are open and so forth. So example, one of those contracts is for Valley Asphalt, which stays open year round. One company specifically does that cold patch and so forth. The prices have stayed relatively steady as it relates to asphalt over the last couple years. So we haven't seen any major spikes like we have in other areas where we've seen major increases.
Great. Thank you very much.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Shelley Materials Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $415,000.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Highway LLC for an amount not to exceed $78,400.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of street materials with Valley Asphalt Corporation for an amount not to exceed $576,050.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Moving on to the resolution, supporting the Ohio Commission for the United States Semi-Quincentennial.
So moved.
So move.
Second. You guys gonna second it? I'll second it. It's moved and seconded. The comments from commissioners?
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Semi-quincentennial.
Yeah, so specifically in 2026, there'll be the 250th birthday of our country, and the state of Ohio has established an Ohio Commission that is looking at how we can participate in celebrating this occasion across the state of Ohio as part of across the country. And so specifically, I know the Convention and Visitors Bureau is working directly with the state and how we can be supportive here in Springfield and take part in that celebration and the planning of that celebration.
Exciting.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Confirming purchases and obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett,
Yes.
Mrs. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase and installation of upfitting for 4 trucks of the newest model year available for an amount not to exceed $644,465 from Rush Truck Centers through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. What are we upfitting?
Yeah, specifically, these are dump trucks. 3 trucks are for our street division, 1 for our water distribution division. They replace a 2013, 2014, 2 2014s and a 2016. And specifically, this upfits them for snowplow work and so forth with the dump body and everything.
Thanks. Dr. Estrop?
Are these international trucks?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with High Bridge Consulting LLC for professional consulting services for an amount not to exceed $48,000 for the period of January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2026, confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from January 1, 2025 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 22-190 regarding the Sycamore Ridge Tax Increment Financing Incentive District and providing for compensation payments and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? Dr.
No more
Estrop? Or
Yes.
Commissioner?
Did this also receive approval by the Board of Education of the Clark Shawnee School District?
Yes, Commissioner, that is correct. At their December 18th meeting, they had approved the school compensation agreement relative to this agreement.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner? Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Approving an amendment to the new petition for creation of Energy Special Improvement District and for special assessments for special energy improvement project, an affidavit under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1710, amending special assessments levied by the city of Springfield, Ohio, under that new petition pursuant to ordinance number 24-60, and approving amendments to documents authorized in connection with the new petition and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
A motion to revise the 2025 calendar of city commission meetings to move the city commission retreat Tuesday and Wednesday, April 15 and 16, and be held in the NOMC conference.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are comments from commissioners? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
There was one item added to the agenda, consenting to the appointment of Bradley Souls to the City Planning Board and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Just want to say that this example of a citizen that texted me and we got together and he wants to be involved. I said, fill out an application. We have many boards to serve on. He did that quickly, and it's just cool that he's getting involved with the city. So I really appreciate his interest.
And Mr. Souls is actually, that's why I was smiling when I heard his name. That's one of my mother's all-time favorite students, like of all time. He gave my mom a birthday gift for forever, for years,
awesome.
into his late childhood. So
It's very energetic.
very, very pleasing to hear that. Shout out to Mr. Souls.
Mayor, may I just acknowledge, like, how can we tell the community if there are boards available and how they can serve?
Yeah, certainly we can update and do periodic press releases just talking about opportunities that exist on various boards. The city clerk keeps a list of vacant board positions. One of the best things is just provide an application. Go ahead and fill out an application, and then I know Regina will reach out with them and talk with them about opportunities that are open currently, but we can certainly do some marketing on our website and so forth, or open positions on our boards.
And I know that Mike was here earlier and brought up the trash situation, which drives me insane too. But I am on 2 boards that deal with city beautification, and I welcome board members.
All right. Comments from the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Just comments from commissioners left. I was late earlier because I was at the State House, continuing relationships with our senator, visiting him in his office. It was a legislative reception. And I have to say, it's really nice to know and meet the governor, but it was very cool to meet Jim Trussell, our new lieutenant governor. I was a little starstruck, but I got to shake his hand and talk with him briefly. And so that was really cool. But just good to be there and represent Springfield today.
Did you ask him for a copy of that off-tackle run that he used to?
At that point, I did not care. This is national
No.
championship. Beat Michigan 9 times, right? Okay, sorry, I'm done. It was cool.
That was a good one.
Other commissioners, any final comments?
Yeah. This past weekend, I unfortunately witnessed a car accident, and I just want to say how impressed I was with both police and fire. They responded to the scene, immediately transported the patient to the hospital, and had the car towed within like 45 minutes. It was impressive. So.
A little bit of a list of gratitude and thanks. First of all, I want to acknowledge the passing of Bill Monaghan and his passion for the community and the love for his community. I've spoke with him several times over this past year, and I just want to acknowledge that. I also want to thank Barron for his work and the folks who worked at the warming center. It is appreciated. I went over there several times. I know some of us have, and I just really appreciate that work that was being done over there and wanted to acknowledge that. And a huge thank you to the folks keeping our streets cleared that work for the city. And just a reminder that the city manager, I think you stated that potholes like to come open in the winter time. Where can we report those potholes?
Yeah, if you reach out to our service department, 937-525-5800, and you can speak with someone at the front office there, and I can guarantee that they will be filled quickly. We have great street crews that are out there. This is the time of year, just with the constant freezing and thawing, that we're seeing more potholes come. And I always emphasize, don't assume that we know it's there. We can't be on every street all day, every day. And so if you see a pothole, call. If we don't already have a report of it, we'll take that down and it will get filled. Our crews do a great job.
And the last thanks I have is for Caleb, who came from OIC to give us an update about that gun grant, which is very important in our community, as we know, and, recognizing the issue and dealing with it. But also I want to acknowledge the retirement of former OIC Director Mike Calabrese, who's done a lot in this community as well. It's just appreciated, and look forward to seeing more progress and moving forward over at OIC with the new director, Leslie Crew, who I went to Leadership Academy with and graduated in 2008 with her. So looking forward to working with her through her new position. Thank you.
Excellent. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes. Thank you for coming.